Good morning, you guys, and welcome back to another episode of Realty Rides. So today I thought I'd change things up a little bit and do a nice little car video. We haven't done one in a while, and you guys seem to like it. So today I'm going to show you guys how to add oil, and don't laugh, but add oil to a vintage 911 and a relatively more modern 997 variant. They couldn't be more different. One is air-cooled, one is water-cooled. And there's a process to add oil to this car, and definitely a process to this one as well. It's not hard, it's just a little involved, and it's not your standard pull the dipstick out and check the oil level and put oil in. No, it's completely different than that. So in today's video, we'll show you guys how to do it, but before that, we're going to get these cars up to room temperature, or actually engine temperature, drive them around a little bit here on Whitby, and then I'll show you the example of how I add oil to these two cars. Okay guys, now that we drove both cars around the block a couple times to bring them to operating temperature, we're going to do a little check on the oil amount in the 997. So this is a 2006 C4S, and right now we're going to show you right here, this is the oil filler, oil cap. And the first thing you're going to notice is it has no dipstick. It's just an open hole right there, no dipstick. So that's where you put the oil in. So the way you check the oil on these newer Porsches, make sure that I close it properly, is you check inside, because it has what's called an electronic dipstick that's attached to the computer of the car. And the way you check that is, excuse me, get in the car, put the ignition on, and then you'll see right there, oil measurement duration, 3 seconds to 1 second, and that tells you right there the amount of oil that's in the car. So my oil is perfect. It's right there, right below the top notch, which is a little black box, and that's where you want the oil to be. So this little device here allows you to gives you also mileage, how many miles you have on the gallon on the tank of gas you have. Right now it looks like 216 miles, and it has and it gives you the chrono, which is the chrono clock over here. You guys get the point. So that's where the oil is. That's how you check it on the 997. So unfortunately, if you look at the owner's manual on this car, if all the electronics go dead, there's really no surefire way to check the oil on this engine, let alone, unless you totally drain everything out and then put brand new oil in it. But you have to charge the battery back up to make sure the electronics are working, and that is the way you can check on this car, by checking the oil electronic dipstick that's on this car, and that's right here again. Oil measurement duration is 3 seconds, 2 seconds, 1 second, and it tells you exactly where your oil is. And you want it to be between the top and the middle. You never want it to be at the bottom. So that's how you check on the 997 or in the newer model Porsches. So now let's take a look and see how you add oil to the air-cooled car. Okay guys, so on the air-cooled car, as you can tell, this is a completely different motor. This is an old school air-cooled, oil-cooled and air-cooled engine. It's about 200 horsepower. This is on our 83 911 SC. And the way you change the oil on this thing is, first of all, there is the oil filter, the oil filler, and inside there's a dipstick. But before you do anything, you got to start this engine up, and the engine has to run for a few seconds, and then you can check the dipstick that's inside the oil filler. But you'll see in a second. Let me start the engine up, and I'll show you exactly what we do. So before I start the engine up, also, there's the oil consumption gauge. So my gauge is a little bit broken. Typically it should be there in between the red and the white mark right there in the middle, but it's aiming towards the top. But I know how much oil this car has at any given time, because on the dipstick there's a little notch. It'll tell you where the oil is full. So right now I'm going to start the engine up, and this is how you add oil to an old school air-cooled 911. So start the engine up. Yeah, it starts right up. And what we do here is we remove the oil cap, and then inside is a little dipstick. There's a little dipstick right there. Clean it real fast. I'm doing this with one hand, so you gotta excuse me for that. So there you see on the dipstick itself is a little notch. Oil has to be right past that little notch. So I check it again before I add oil into it. There's a little hole on the top. Put the dipstick back in, and it has to be run. It has to be checked by the oil while the engine's being run. So there is a little notch. So I can see I need a little bit more oil. So in this situation here, I use a large funnel, make sure that's nice and clean, and I put the funnel right inside of the oil filler, and I use 2050 grade oil for this engine. It has about 10 quarts. Oil in like this. The car's a little bit noisy. So it takes a couple of seconds for the oil to fill up. Meanwhile, I check the engine out for anything else, any type of anomaly, smoking of any kind. Yes, it needs to be clean. It's a little dirty right now. But it's running pretty good for a car with over 105,000 miles on it. So that's about enough for the oil. What to do then, check it again with the dipstick. Take this thing out. Put the dipstick back in. There's a little hole on top. There's a little hole on the very top. Pull it back out. And right now, it's past that little notch. I know for a fact that the oil is okay, so just want to show you guys for reference. There's that little notch on top. Let it sit there for a few seconds. Take it back out. And there's oil right there at the notch. Then you put the cap back on while it's running. And now normally you would go to the oil gauge here on the front, but my gauge is broken and I need to have it fixed. The oil consumption would be somewhere right there in the middle. But I put a quart of oil in it a couple days ago, so right now I know it's fine. But that's how you add oil on an air-cooled 911. It's not a lot of work, but it's definitely not the way you do it on typical cars. So again, now that the engine's off, there is the oil filler cap. There is the oil tank. This is a sump tank, by the way, on the bottom. There's a little dipstick that comes out of this little hole right here on the very top. And that's where you put the oil in. And you have to have it running so that the oil lubricates the engine and that it pumps properly throughout the entire system. Because there's also in the very front of the car, which I'll show you in another video, are two oil, not radiators, but oil coolers. And they're managed by a series of pipes that go along the side of the car, aluminum hoses that go along the side of the car to the front, and that adds in the cooling of this engine. Well, I hope you liked my quick tutorial on how to check and add oil to your vintage and newer Porsche 911. I hope you found it helpful. Again, make sure to read your owner's manual first and exercise caution, as 911 models can differ. Use a mechanic if in doubt. Never try to work on a car if uncomfortable. Thanks again for watching. Please subscribe, comment, and share, and happy motoring, you guys.